Feel quite nice. March 2011, and we're back to 200. Ms. Duncan for the people.
The witness.
Ms. Murray, a defense counsel.
And I will be Mr. Baker for the defense.
Well,
okay, fine.
Ready? Begin. Mr. Garner, before we took the break, we were discussing when you arrived at the bar on that day in July. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
I just had some more questions for you in that regard. What was the purpose in meeting my client that day?
Well, we were just getting together to catch up on old times, you know. We hadn't seen each other in a while.
You testified previously that you had gone to high school together. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And how many years ago was that approximately?
Well, we graduated in 1976. I had only seen him maybe once or twice since then at reunion type of events.
Okay, when was the previous time before the day in question that you had seen Michael Nelson?
Well, I would guess that it would be about a year before that.
Let me just clarify something for the record. We don't want you to guess. It doesn't need to be an exact date, but we don't want you to guess.
I completely understand. I would say I visited him about a year before that.
Do you remember the event or the reason that you had seen each other that time?
Yes, it was a birthday party for a mutual friend.
Okay, was that also someone who you had attended high school with?
Yes, that's right. Someone had arranged a surprise birthday party.
Getting back to the event that we are talking about today, do you remember what time you got to the bar that afternoon?
I got to the restaurant probably about 4:30. We were supposed to meet a little bit before 5 because we were also going to try to maybe go see some friends later.
You mean later that same evening?
Yes.
When you arrived, did you see Michael Nelson anywhere in the bar?
No, I arrived before he did. I just waited in the lobby area for him to finally get there.
Do you remember approximately what time you saw my client arrive?
I think I had been there for maybe 15 minutes before he came in.
Counsel, I would like to mark this diagram as my next exhibit.
Why don't you describe it for the record and then we can have it identified?
I will ask the witness if he recognizes it.
Let's mark it as Exhibit 14.
Mr. Garner, do you recognize what this color photograph depicts?
Yes, it is the patio area of the restaurant where I met Mike that afternoon.
Do you see this area here on the photo?
Yes, I do.
Would you please use this marker and indicate an X where you were when you initially saw my client that evening?
I was sitting on this bench right here out in the front of the patio area. I had gone in and checked the reservation. He wasn't there yet. I just remained out in front there and waited for Michael to get there.
Had you arranged a meeting time with Michael Nelson that afternoon?
He left me a message earlier and said he would probably be there before 5. I went at 4:30 because I came directly from the gym.
What did you say your plans were for the evening?
We were actually just going to get together and have some dinner before we went to our friend's apartment.
And had you already made arrangements to meet with that other friend, or?
Very loose arrangements. I mean, it wasn't like a party or anything like before. We were just trying to catch up and see who was still living in the neighborhood and that type of thing. We were going to go see Paul Sanders after dinner that night.
So Paul wasn't meeting you two for dinner?
No, Michael had talked to Paul earlier in the week and said that we were going to be in the area and might stop by.
And by Michael, you mean the plaintiff Michael Nelson?
Yes, that's correct.
Excuse me for interrupting. May I see the exhibit that you previously marked?
Certainly. This is Exhibit 14, the diagram of the patio.
I wanted to see the photographs that were marked this morning. Do you have those?
Counsel, I actually have them.
When you identified this as a diagram, you were talking about the photograph?
Correct. I'm sorry. It's a photograph. I wanted simply to have the witness explain to us where he was seated when my client arrived.
The record should reflect that the witness has marked Exhibit 14 with an X.
All right, thank you.
I have nothing further for right now.
Counsel, you can go first if you want.
Sure, thank you.
Defense counsel will have some questions for you also.
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Garner, I represent David Mitchell, one of the defendants in this lawsuit.
All right.
I have some questions for you about your observations that evening. If you don't understand what I am asking, just ask me to repeat it or explain it, and I will be happy to do that for you.
Okay, no problem.
You were questioned about when you first noticed my client approach your table on the patio. Do you recall that?
Certainly.
Please describe to us what you were doing when you first observed Mr. Mitchell.
Mike and I were just sitting out there on the patio. enjoying dinner when your client just came up and started a fight.
Had you already ordered your dinner when you first observed Mr. Mitchell approach your table?
Yes, actually, we were almost finished.
What did you order that evening?
I object. Why is that relevant?
Well, let me rephrase the question.
All right.
Had you ordered some alcohol with your meal that evening?
No, I don't drink. I just had some hot tea or maybe just water. I don't know.
But no alcohol that night?
No, I don't really drink.
Did Mr. Nelson order something to drink?
I'm sure he did. He ordered a beer when he first got there.
Were you seated right away after he arrived?
No, we remained in the bar until our table was ready.
How long would you estimate that was?
Probably about 20 minutes.
Do you remember if your friend was finished with his beer before you were seated at your table?
I don't remember him carrying a bottle to the table. I don't remember.
Do you remember him ordering a drink when you were seated at your table?
The waitress brought him a beer, but I don't remember him ordering it.
Well, would you agree with me that he must have ordered another beer or she wouldn't have brought him one?
Objection calls for speculation.
I join in that objection. Also, there is no foundation.
Mr. Garner, how did you know that there was going to be a fight when my client approached your table?
I didn't know that there was going to be a fight.
I thought you testified earlier that you knew something was going down when you observed my client heading your way.
Objection misstates the testimony.
I just could see that he appeared to be upset.
You didn't understand why he was angry?
Not really. I mean, I could understand he possibly may have been upset at what he thought Mike had said to him.
Excuse me, I move to strike the last part of that answer. It is not relevant what this witness might have thought.
Join.
Mr. Garner, did you overhear any conversation between your friend and my client before the altercation occurred?
Yes, I did. I heard a little bit.
Do you recall who spoke first?
Yes, Mike was commenting that the guy's motorcycle was too loud.
Now, you said that he commented. Who was he commenting to, do you know?
Mike was talking to me while we were sitting on the patio eating dinner. He said that the motorcycle was too loud.
What did you observe Mr. Mitchell to be physically doing when Mr. Nelson made that comment?
Well, I just saw him park the bike and get off of it. I wasn't really paying attention to him, but I knew there was a motorcycle there.
Your earlier testimony was that Mr. Mitchell just got off his bike and went over and struck Mr. Nelson for no reason. Is that correct?
Well, I didn't see a reason for him to hit Mike like that.
Was Mr. Nelson angry for some reason that evening?
Objection calls for speculation.
Well, how would you describe Mr. Nelson's demeanor that evening when he met you for dinner?
Perfectly fine. He got there shortly after I did. We ordered a very nice dinner. We were just chatting and getting caught up on old times.
Did you at any time notice a change in his demeanor?
Yes, I did.
When did you notice that change?
When your client was revving the engine on his motorcycle for no reason.
What was it that made you eventually notice?
We were just trying to have a conversation, and it was too loud.
What was the first conversation that you overheard between my client and your friend?
Mike was commenting that the motorcycle was too loud and that the guy maybe should just back off a bit.
Did he direct his comments to Mr. Mitchell?
No, he was talking to me, but your guy started walking over to us.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. Mitchell?
No, he just came over and asked Mike what his problem was.
Did Mike respond to him?
Mike just said the bike was loud.
Was he angry or yelling when he said that?
Objection calls for speculation.
What was Mike's demeanor when my client approached him?
Mike was just talking to me. He didn't really even look at the guy. He just said that the motorcycle was loud.
Did you hear any profanity from either of the two men at any time during their conversation?
Well, I wouldn't really call it a conversation. Mike was just talking and the other guy got mad.
In Mike's comments, did you hear any profanity?
Not that I recall.
Would it refresh your memory if you read a police report that was taken that evening?
I don't believe so.
Nothing further at this time.
Mr. Garner, I represent the restaurant where this altercation happened. I have a couple questions for you.
That's fine.
You have previously testified that when you saw the exchange between the plaintiff and the defendant, you were very shocked. Is that how you would describe it?
Correct.
Why were you shocked?
Well, I couldn't imagine that it would go that far.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Mike is a nice guy. He isn't the type of person who gets in fights when he goes out.
Objection, non-responsive.
I think it is responsive.
Now, you were asked about this profanity that might have been used in this altercation. Did you hear either of the two men involved using profanity?
Not really profanity. I mean, I guess it is a matter of personal opinion on what that is.
Do you recall being interviewed at the scene the night that this happened?
Yes, I do.
Do you know approximately what time that was?
It was after Mike had been taken to the hospital in the ambulance. I was waiting to speak with the officer.
Did you accompany your friend to the hospital in the ambulance?
I wanted to. The police said that I needed to remain at the restaurant and speak to them before I could go to the hospital.
So you were interviewed at the scene. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the only interview that you gave to the police?
I think so. I don't remember any other one.
If I told you that there is a recording of an interview at the hospital, would that refresh your recollection?
At the hospital?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. I did speak to a guy at the hospital. I didn't know that he was a police officer, though.
He wasn't wearing a traditional police uniform?
No, he was just in regular clothes. I assumed he was from the bar.
Did he represent himself as being from the bar?
Not that I recall.
Do you remember a name that might have been given to you?
No, I don't.
And did you testify earlier that you actually saw the defendant make physical contact with the plaintiff?
I don't know who the defendant is and who the plaintiff is, but I saw Mr. Mitchell take a good swing at my friend. He punched Michael hard. He went down immediately. It happened quickly.
Did you observe your your friend? Did you see him make physical contact with the person who hit him?
You mean, did he hit him back or something crazy like that?
Correct. Did you observe him make contact using any part of his body?
Absolutely not. The other gentleman came over and punched Michael. He was down for the count. He immediately was knocked out.
Nothing further, thank you.
Mr. Garner, when your friend was knocked down, was he unconscious?
Objection, lack of foundation.
I can rephrase the question.
Thank you.
You saw Mike get punched, is that correct?
Yes,
You described previously that it was like watching somebody collapse or fall over, is that right?
that's correct.
How close were you when Mike hit the pavement?
It happened so quickly. We were just sitting there eating dinner. The next thing I knew, he was flat on the ground.
And did you hear any conversation between the two men before that occurred?
Not really, just Mike saying that the guy's motorcycle was really too loud. He didn't know who the guy was trying to impress.
Now, is that something that Mr. Nelson said, or is that something that you are only assuming?
I believe that was the tenor of the comment. I mean, there is no reason for all the noise. It is like somebody is trying to impress somebody.
Did Mike ask Mr. Mitchell who he was trying to impress?
No, he didn't really talk to him at all.
So you didn't actually hear any conversation regarding that?
Not at all. Are you asking me if Mike deserved to be hit?
Objection, sir. Unfortunately, you aren't allowed to ask the questions today. This is merely a legal process whereby all of us ask you questions regarding what your observations were.
I understand.
If I may add something, this is a very casual setting and it could perhaps seem like an informal conversation. But we do have certain rules of law that we have to abide by, and you don't get to ask questions.
I am sorry. I am just trying to figure out what you are trying to ask me about or what you are trying to do.
There is no secret motive, sir. We are just asking questions so we can prepare our respective cases.
Mr. Garner, one last area I have for you is dealing with when you got to the hospital. Did you have any conversation with any of the medical staff there when you arrived at the hospital?
No, they wouldn't talk to me because I am not related to Mike.
Nothing further, thank you.
If I may follow up on that,
That's fine.
did you make any phone calls to anyone to alert them that Mr. Nelson was at the hospital?
I tried to do that, but I couldn't remember the number.
Who did you try to contact?
Mike's wife. I was trying to remember their home telephone number, but all I could remember was his cell phone number.
Did you eventually get a hold of her at any time?
No, unfortunately, I didn't.
And the medical personnel at the hospital, did they ever give you an update on your friend's condition?
No, they did not.
Did you make inquiries, though?
Yes, I did.
And do you remember who you asked?
I just spoke to the nurses who were there. They told me that the doctor would have to talk to me. And then when the doctor came in to see Mike, they told me I had to wait outside. So I didn't speak to the doctor.
Are we talking about in the emergency room, or is this when he was admitted?
Just in the emergency room.
Nothing further. May we allow Mr. Garner to leave?
I don't have anything further. Thank you, Mr. Garner, for making yourself available.
No problem.
We appreciate your coming back today to finish this up.
It is not a problem.
I do have just one question.
He almost made it out.
Mr. Garner, have you spoken to my client since the night that this happened?
No, I tried to see him in the hospital, but he declined my visits.
So you haven't spoken to him about your testimony?
No.
Perhaps the record should reflect that both Mr. Nelson and Mr. Mitchell are present for today's depot.
So stipulated.
Yes, I will stipulate to that.
Thank you.
Did you try to ascertain why he didn't want to see you?
I talked to his wife. She just said he wasn't himself since this whole thing happened, and that I shouldn't take it personally.
Objection, that would be hearsay.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you again, Mr. Garner, for coming back to finish up your testimony today. We all appreciate your time. You may be excused.
Thank you. So do I need to come back again?
No, thank you.
As we discussed with you the other day, you will receive the transcript for your review. You will be contacted if we have any other questions for you.
Can we go off the record? Is there anything else that we need to put on the record today?
Not today, but very soon we will be putting the CSR license numbers of all these beautiful, beautiful people.